everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Lisa with Knocked Up Abroad here with Louise at Thriving Abroad. Thank you for joining me. Where are you located, Louise?
Okay, I am sitting at my desk in Hampshire in the UK.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. And it's sunny here today in Sweden, which is nice and unusual.
It's definitely not sunny here.
I love
It's
this weather.
really wet, grey. Last day of the school Easter holidays. So my kids are around somewhere. So my office is in the house.
Oh,
So they're around somewhere, making the most of their final day of freedom. But they won't be doing it outside because it's raining. Oh, sad, never mind.
So tell us what you do at Thriving Abroad.
Okay, well, so I have a company called Thriving Abroad, which I started 3 years ago with my business partner, Evelyn Simpson. We've both lived abroad for many, many years in sort of different guises, if you like. We relocated either with our own jobs or with our partners, and we've lived abroad with our partners and no children, with our partners and children, and we've both actually recently repatriated back to the UK. I'm down in the south of the UK and Evelyn's up in the north in Edinburgh. And we started Thriving Abroad as a support service for expat partners. So we're both coaches, life and career coaches. I've got a background in occupational psychology, and Evelyn, well, she was an investment banker. That's how she first started her expat life. She moved to New York, the Big Apple, as an investment banker. And so we kind of use our experience as expats to work with expat partners to support them through the process and to help them find, and create their sort of meaningful careers or portable careers, or go back to work, whatever it is they choose to do, or not work and choose other interests whilst they're abroad. So we help them through the transition process. And we also work with expat partners and their partners, so often the international assignees, helping them through the process too. So that's Thriving Abroad.
Oh, good. That's great. And so you have a website, and so do people sign up for coaching services? Okay.
Yeah. They've got a website, thrivingabroad.com, which actually it's currently as it is at the moment. It's about to change slightly. But yeah, if people want to go and sign up to a newsletter, they can do. Just go to thrivingabroad.com and you'll see a pop-up where you can sign up for a newsletter. It's a monthly one. No, it's not. It's two fortnightly. And at the moment we are developing it. We have a podcast series where we interview people related to international relocation, or people who have relocated, who support, depending on the interview. And people can access that. Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like you have a lot of resources for expats to check out before they.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we have two programs. The first one's Relocation Ready. That's for people who are thinking about relocating and want some support to think through the decision, and not so much, I mean, it might be the decision around yes, no, but actually often it's also all the other little mini decisions you make alongside a relocation decision. If you're relocating family, the whole issue of schooling and all of those kinds of issues. So we support people through that process to make sure they, prepare in the best way best way possible, so they sort of hit the ground running in their new location. And that's Relocation Ready. And then a second program, which is it's called Thrive, and that's about building your life abroad and thriving in your new location, wherever that is. And we work with people all over the world. So location is not particularly an issue because we work online, like now. And conference facilities, and if people are local, we'll meet face to face. But and so we'll have clients who might go and see in London or Edinburgh, but we also work by Skype online.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that. I think the hardest part of that is just balancing availability and time zone differences.
Yes, I get myself into quite a few muddles over that, and every year I think I'm going to get better at it. But I think it's that time zone change. In the UK we've just changed our clocks. And that kind of puts. That always muddles me, and I end up with a few mixed meetings. But anyway, we will survive.
Meet at 10:30 at night because they're in their morning. That's great. So those resources are available, and I know that. Have you teamed up with Rachel Yates at Expat Lifeline, or do you do?
Yeah, we've done a podcast with her. So yeah, and we're looking at ways that we might work with her in the future. But yes, yeah, I mean, I love what she does, and it kind of complements quite a bit what we do, because we're sort of looking at the broader picture. A lot of what she does is kind of the nitty-gritty detail of planning, and of course the really big issue around for partners anyway, the sort of financial dependency issue is a big one often we find.
Yeah, I think when we were planning is the word, we didn't have any time to plan for a relocation because my husband got the job offer and we had to just go within 5 weeks. So we had to pack up the house and sell everything, and
wow,
no time to like, oh, let's consider the pros and the cons, and because the whole time it was like, let's apply for this job, and I guess we could have done the pros and cons in that space of time, but I almost didn't want to do any prep in case it didn't happen. And then
interesting,
that sounds awful. Like I don't want to prepare in case it doesn't happen, but I was so worried about him not getting the job offer that I was like, I don't want to change anything by reading or doing research. And of course I had no idea all of these resources were available. Well, no, and I don't think people do, and that's part of why we do what we do. I mean, we recognise that we get people come to us at different stages of that process, and often the actual big yes/no decision is already made, because I think people come to the whole opportunity, and perhaps are being presented with opportunities because they've already said, oh yes, international life seems attractive to us, and if an opportunity came, if it was right location, then we would think about we would go. So they often come with that decision made. So what we then do is to support them through all the other. I mean, you must have, when you think back to that 5-week period, you're constantly making decisions about where you live. I like have my to-do list like in my email from that time, and it was like go to the bank, clean, like tell them that we're moving, change out of address. It was all like the very nitty gritty, like look at our medical records and tell them we were moving, and like all of these things. So it's just like the overwhelming, like day to day, minute by minute things that you don't have maybe the luxury to like sit back and think of like the big picture of, that's for our future. And honestly, I don't think I guess I was like, oh, we're going to live abroad, it's going to be an adventure. And that's where I stopped. Like I wasn't thinking that the adventure was going to take us here and there or wherever, or away from my career that I had worked so hard for. And like, how am I going to use my skills, and like what's going to happen to my future? I was just thinking like, it'll all work out. It'll be fine.
And on balance, it did. Did it? I don't know.
I think so. I love our life, but I think there are trade-offs always, and it's not always, you're trading the uncertainty or I guess you're trading security and knowing like your life is on a track as much as any life is on a track for like the uncertainty, but with that uncertainty and adventure come maybe unexpected challenges or things you couldn't have planned on. So it's just, I think, it's just life. Like how can anyone plan?
No, I agree. There's a lot. There's a lot that that's going to just happen because it happens. But I suppose we're actually writing a book at the moment, which will be published around October this year. But it's written for companies to use with their assignees, and if they have partners, their partners. And it starts with the whole kind of context of international mobility and sort of explaining that. So for people who are sitting there thinking, well, is this where I want my career to go? And if it is, how do I develop that opportunity? But also thinking about international mobility and the experience it brings, whether it is full-time international assignment or, commuter assignments, short-term and all of that. But what we do aim to do in the book is to talk people through the process so they can see the challenges and the potential hotspots, so that when they actually come to that point when someone says, right, are you ready to go? They have in their mind, these are the potential ways in which it might impact negatively on us. And one of the big areas is the partner's career, which I think, when I think back to relocating, it took me a year to decide to follow my husband years back, over 20 years ago, he was working in Spain, and he worked in Spain for a year. And we would have this commuter relationship, and I'd go to Spain at the weekends, which was lovely. I'd go to Madrid. What a wonderful end to a hectic work week. And then he would come to the UK, and we did it for a year, but it obviously wasn't going to work long term. So I then gave up my job at that point and went to live in Madrid. And I remember for the first 6 months, I thought I was in heaven. I didn't have to worry about work. I didn't have to, get up in the morning. I had the freedom. We could go away at weekends. I could just fit around his schedule. It was great. But then I didn't have kids.
Right.
And so 6 months in, the novelty really did begin to wear off. And I hit a real crisis point where I kind of wondered what I was going to do and how I was going to use my time. And I retrained, and it worked in the end. But I think had I realised how I might potentially feel, I just left the UK and dropped my job. There were ways I could have actually continued it in Madrid, because I was in an international insurance company. They had offices in Madrid. And I think I even went for one interview.
Really?
And about doing something for one of the companies. And I kind of, I don't know, I just wasn't being real. I think you're coping with the whole transition. You don't kind of, I suppose I was quite young as well. And I just kind of let it go. And I've lived to regret that hugely. And I think had I at that point sat down and really thought a bit more carefully about, well, actually, what do I want for my future? And is it a life without career? Which, okay, it wasn't, but it could have been.
Right.
And I need to go through patches when I haven't worked. For me, career has been really important, and I always thought it was, but I kind of let it go, and I think I lost some traction and opportunity there. I had some career coaching. I mean, career coaching really didn't exist, I suppose, in the way that it does now. Then I would have perhaps approached it in a different way. And I kind of went on. We moved many times, and every time there was a transition and change, and that kind of, it takes you time to work through that transition and change. And then, you're walking towards, sorry, my dog. Let me see, I've got a little cocker spaniel. He's lovely. But anyway, so yes, where was I talking about?
Career and how.
Career, yes, yeah.
I think, we're lucky in that we're not moving frequently. So we've pretty much immigrated, and we're staying and putting down roots. And so there's more ability, I think, for me to have a local career and to build that. There's like this language barrier issue where they require fluency, or I have to talk myself through a Swedish interview and land a job that is mostly in English, but with a little, Swedish.
But you need to be able to sometimes. And how is your Swedish? Because how long have you been in Sweden now?
4 years.
4 years. Mm.
And next year I can obtain Swedish citizenship, and that would help with my employment opportunities with the public health sector, which is what I have my degree in.
Okay.
They can only hire it's an international government agency, and they can only hire EU citizens because it's an EU citizen thing, which is, we have the same thing in the US. They can only hire US citizens. So once that is obtained, I think my career opportunities, I can almost have sort of like my old career just here and kind of build that. And so there's some potential there, but there is that 5-year gap that I have been maintaining it with work, with consulting work and things that I've been doing on the side. It's just a way of presenting that in a way that's like, no, I have been working.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point, actually, because I think it's very easy to, especially if you're relocating with kids. I know this, so I've relocated without children. I think I probably was more focused, thinking I needed a career at that point. Then I relocated with young kids, and actually I made a conscious decision for a few years not to work and to spend time with the kids. But then towards the end of that, I started thinking, well, what do I want to do? So I started to do courses and upskill and retrain, ready so that when I wanted to work, I could. And then in the end, I set up my own business. But and that was before Thriving Abroad. So I had the business before Thriving Abroad. But I think that is such an important point to just consciously think about, not making a judgment necessarily about whether career is right or wrong. For some people it is and some people it's not, and that's absolutely fine. That's your own choice. But if you know that at some point career is going to be important, and perhaps it isn't appropriate at the point that you're, sitting there in a particular country, you can't work for whatever reason, take time to think about what skills and what experience will help bridge that gap, and try and obtain that, whether it's voluntary work that's relevant and related to your skill set and your area of profession, or doing new courses that are relevant or keep your skill level up. Be conscious about that and do that, because that's so important when it gets to those interviews, to demonstrate that you've kept those, as you say.
Yeah, I think for me, definitely my weak spot is my proficiency in Swedish, and either continue ignoring it and pursue this job next year, or really focus on it and then eliminate that weakness and I can get a job.
The one way to become proficient in a language is just to be actually in that language, working in that language. And because of what I do it all in English language, but I've lived in Portugal and Spain, and I've developed varying levels of proficiency. I wouldn't say I was fluent at all. But my husband, he started from the same base as me, and he worked in Spanish offices and then in Portugal, and he just completely, he would say to people, sorry, not English, Portuguese or Spanish, you have to speak to me in those languages. And he just forced himself to just get completely surrounded by it, and he's fluent in both now. And I look at him and say, I wish I followed that model. I remember when I was when we were first in Spain, and I was doing sort of an hour's course a day. My husband, or hour a week, I think it was, not very much. I mean, you don't learn a language with an hour a week, really, do you? Get the basics, but not sufficient. And he said, the best thing you could do would be to go away and just be completely immersed. Go and spend a month, 2 months with a Spanish family somewhere in Spain and immerse yourself. And I should have done it, and I didn't. So my advice to anyone is just get stuck in there. And that's my one big regret, really, that I hadn't forced myself to do that. And it makes a huge difference to the experience, doesn't it?
It does. And I think so there's just a quick tidbit. It's my husband and I went to a movie last night, which is rare. But we had
What did you see?
We saw Deadpool. Anyway, but so in Swedish movies, I've been to a movie before years ago, before I understood much Swedish, and in the movie theater, like right before the movie comes on, someone from the movie theater comes out and starts talking to you. And when I didn't understand any Swedish, I was like, "What is going on? Like, is this like a fundraiser? Like, do they need money? Like, are they checking to make sure we didn't sneak candy in from the grocery store?" Like, I was all nervous. I'm like, what's going on? And then it happened again last night, and I understood everything that was being said because my proficiency has improved. And
Brilliant.
They were just saying the toilets are over there, turn off your cell phones. Like, they were being very, like, there was nothing important. They said, this is a really fun movie, enjoy, and you have a great night. That was all they were saying. But I missed all of that exchange and what the point of the exchange was years ago when I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're missing when you learn it until you learn it, and they're like, oh, okay, or you may think it's a big deal and really it's not.
Yeah.
So when you work in a language, there's work of vocabulary that you'll never learn in a language class.
Yes.
It's specific to your job, or it's specific to that role. No language class can teach you those things. You just have to learn it.
And you're always learning. I mean, however proficient you become. I mean, my husband, he's fluent, but he wouldn't describe himself as fluent. I would. And a lot of Portuguese will describe him as fluent. But, he says he's not fluent because he doesn't actually have all of the vocabulary. So when you get to the finer points, and doesn't write perfectly, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, operates perfectly well every day. But it's kind of, I think we often make give ourselves a lot of excuses for not, when really, turn it on its head and say, just get out there and do it. Yeah.
I know it's hard, and it's an uncomfortable position to not be able to express yourself and we all want to be professional and present ourselves with a professional face and look competent. And when you don't know the language, you feel very incompetent and like you can't possibly, become intelligent. Like I'm just like an idiot babbling over here. So it's like,
and yet we afford other people who are speaking our own language a huge amount of, I used to be an English teacher as well, so I kind of was used to it. But you often have conversations with people who are not speaking English anywhere perfectly, or only speaking the present tense. But we still, I never stand there and think, oh, what a dreadful person for not having this. I think, well done for trying. And so when I'm trying to speak in Portuguese, that's what I hope other people are thinking.
Please be kind. Please be gentle. So I wish there was like an auto translator that would say exactly what it is I'm saying back to myself, because when I compose words in Swedish, I think this is what I'm saying. I want to say, oh, the girl rode her bike down the street, and like that's what I think I'm saying. Maybe what I'm saying is girl, bike, ride, street, down. Like I'm not entirely sure exactly how to come across, but I've been told that people understand me, so I'm like, okay,
exactly.
I have to go with that.
What is it they say? 80% of communication is the context and the body language. The words are not particularly relevant often.
So it's fine. So were you living abroad when you had your children?
Yes. Well, my second, yes.
Where were you?
Yeah, my first, actually, sorry, let me shut this door so the dog can't, well, you probably will, but my first child I had in the UK, but I was pregnant abroad, and we just happened to relocate back to the UK for 3 years. So that was interesting, because that was, I was really good for the first child, because I was back in the UK and had support of parents, and first grandchild for our family. So it was, got a lot of support and attention, which is great. But then the second child, we just moved abroad when I was 4 months pregnant. So we moved to live on the island of Madeira, Portuguese island, quite small, 300,000 people. Yeah, that was a challenge, a big challenge. Yeah, but I mean, the medical care and everything was lovely, and people were fantastic. In fact, the kind of care for children, babies, was just, I think, better than in the UK in those first 6 months. Really, really good, actually. Never an issue. But just being new to somewhere, not having friends really at that point, and no family to support, and a child that didn't sleep particularly, it was a big challenge. I look back on it now and I say to my husband, you realise, I was quite doolally for about 13 months there, until my daughter slept through the first, at 13 months. I was sleep deprived and alone, and it was tough.
Yeah, there's a reason why sleep deprivation is used as a means of torture, because it really does make you go crazy, and then you just feel, I mean, there's always the talk of sleep debt, and how you can't repay your sleep debt. Like having this debt, like it just compounds, and you can't ever repay it. But there's also shower debt. Like you just can't, like there's a shower and there's no time. And then there's like just like eating debt. Like I sometimes don't eat until way after the kids finally go to bed, because it's just so hectic and crazy. Like laundry debt. Like I can never catch up on laundry or pay or do it.
Well, that never changes, and that gets worse.
Laundry debt just gets worse. And so there are a lot of debts that come in. And I think when you have all of those debts mounting up, and then you have no network to help you even cope, it becomes really hard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that was my case. And I mean, it got easier. I did meet people halfway through, I suppose, that year. So things got a bit easier. I bumped into, I remember taking my eldest daughter's swimming lessons. And I'd been thinking, actually, this probably was about 12 months in, actually. And I'd been thinking, I'd been here a whole year and met people, but, and I know some people, but they're not kind of, we don't click, so they're not the kind of friend I can just pick up the phone and say, oh, I had a dreadful day, come on. And I was at this swimming pool, and there was this woman sitting next to me, and she had a little baby who was a bit younger than my youngest, and she was Portuguese, and we were both watching our children. She suddenly started speaking to me, and she was Venezuelan Portuguese, but she'd lived in the States, and she'd recently moved to Madeira, which actually, is quite unusual because there aren't a lot of expats on Madeira. It's kind of a lot of immigrants who've moved away and come home again, but not that many, and people retiring, but not my age group of kind of. And we just clicked, and well, that's it. It made such a transformation. So that's one thing I always say to people, you will meet at some point someone that will make that difference, but it just takes time, and you never know where or when.
You don't know who they are yet.
Yeah,
and I think that is, it seemed like she was familiar. You guys were in a similar circumstance of moving around a lot, and
just totally got each other, exactly. Even to the point that we were both moved to this tiny island, and that's a whole experience in itself, because it's small and it's very cliquey, in that so many families who live on the island. They're Portuguese mostly, but there are a lot of old traditional English families there as well, and they've all grown up through generations, so it's very difficult to integrate.
They already have their community.
I mean, it's not that they're not friendly, and they would invite us places, but you felt very much an outsider.
I
think it would have taken years and years. I mean, we lived there for 5 years, and then after 5 years we decided, right, we need to make a choice about what we do, and our thoughts were, do we want to grow old on this island, because we could easily have got stuck there. I mean, it's a beautiful island, so it's a lovely place to live for lifestyle. It's a fantastic place to bring up 2 young children because it's incredibly safe. The weather is just lovely.
Sounds nice.
A beautiful house, and so all of that side of it was fantastic. But just then playing it forward and thinking, is this where we want to be in 20 years' time? And we suddenly realised we didn't. So we then decided to move on.
So you mentioned that your birth experience was completely different in Madeira than it was through the national health system in the UK. Can you describe?
Yeah. Well, I suppose the difference probably was public versus private, because in the UK I just used the public health service. I mean, it was okay here. And it was fine. It was fine. But it wasn't as personal, I suppose, as in Madeira, because in the UK system, it's just luck who happens to be at the hospital at the point you go to. So you get whatever midwife, and they were all fine. I wouldn't fault the care in the UK at all. But in Portugal, I had an obstetrician gynecologist who was the one who would deliver. So I knew him before. So I found that very reassuring. I think that made a massive difference, actually, for me. Because the other scenario would have been I would have been in the public health service in Portugal, which is fine. I mean, I know people who've done that, and that's been fine. But it was lovely knowing that he was a lovely man anyway. So it was lovely just knowing I was under his charge, and things did go a bit wrong, and I ended up having an emergency cesarean, and it was just nice to know that I was he was doing it, and
right,
and
that he was.
I trusted him.
You already had that relationship, and I think that. Comfort is probably the comfort for the mother is very important during the labor and delivery processes.
Yes.
If you feel uncomfortable, your body's going to tighten up, and you're not going to. Things are going to stall or become issues, and then it can escalate from there.
So
if you're with someone you have that relationship with, it can help. It can help.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose actually now I think back on it. The first part, I went into labour in the middle of the night, and I went to the hospital, and there was the midwife who I had met before, so that was good. She was luckily the one that arrived, and she was lovely, very lovely, but she didn't speak any English at all, and my Portuguese at that point wasn't brilliant. I mean, I could cope, and my husband abandoned me to go back home for my other daughter, because my parents had literally flown in the night before, and I remember having dinner with them, and then I can remember waking up and my water's broke, and I went into my mum and said, "Mum, I'm going to the hospital," and she's like, "Oh, you can't, we've only just arrived, you're not supposed to."
Perfect timing that you're here, we have to go.
Exactly. So my parents were dumped straight into it, so he went back to check that they were all right and sort out what they were doing with our other daughter, and and then the doctor got called in because my daughter Isabel was stuck, and then he very quickly decided, no, this is going to have to be a cesarean. I don't know, in the UK would it be different? It may well have been. I mean, there's more medical intervention in Portugal, but I trusted him, so I went with it, and everything was fine, and the care after that was brilliant. So
good.
Yes. Yeah.
I think the most important thing is a healthy birth.
Healthy birth. And then the support afterwards, and the health support afterwards was very good. They have the National Health Service is fantastic there in that sense. So I would have my monthly checkups, and they all knew me as the English lady. They always had an English midwife who could speak some English with me.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. Yeah. My experience was a little different because even though we were in the public system of Sweden, like all of the hospitals are public, and so it's more, I think, modeled sort of like the NHS.
Right.
You just don't know who's gonna birth your baby. You just show up, and it's whoever's there.
Yeah.
In the US, I went to a midwife practice, and so there were 5 midwives there, and they said, one of us may deliver your baby, like whoever's on call that night. So they knew it would be 1 out of 5. And so throughout my appointments, I would like have a different one. It would kind of rotate through. So I kind of knew all of them okay, like just a little bit. So when I arrived after laboring at home for a while, I arrived at the hospital, and the midwife on call, it was like the last 2 hours of her shift. And she was like falling asleep on me. She's sitting on my bed, and she's like falling asleep, and she's like, Lisa, you're going to be great. This is going to and she just kept like closing her eyes and like leaning forward. And I'm like, I think your shift needs to be over now. Like, I need to not deliver my baby on your shift because you are not awake. Like, I'm not okay. And so I just kept like walking the halls, and then sure enough, she's like, I'm going to go home, but someone else is coming in and she'll take care of you. I was like, okay, thanks. Like, great, thanks. And then the other one was like, all right, let's go. Let's have this baby. I'm like, okay, you're in charge.
You're awake and alert.
You are awake, and you seem prepared and ready to go. So yeah, I think that even in a private practice, sometimes you may have like a weird situation with someone where you're like, I don't want you delivering my baby. Can we have somebody else? But it worked out.
Yeah, good. Yeah, no, I'm sure it's luck of the draw, I guess, in both scenarios, really. But yeah, worked.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone has a unique experience, no matter what happens. It's all different. So, before we say goodbye, are there any last things you'd like to say? Any lessons learned? Nuggets of wisdom?
Yeah, well, actually, that's probably what our book is going to be all about. It's lessons learned, actually. So that's kind of had a big influence on the situation. I suppose, actually, now looking back, one of the big lessons I think I and my husband, we've both learned, and that is about thinking forward. I think one thing about relocating, especially if you're relocating every 3 or 4 years, is it can become all-consuming in a way. You kind of, the preparation to go and the arrival, that takes 6 months or whatever, and then you settle in, and it's totally, you're very much focused on the here and now, because that's obviously what you need to sort and you want to adjust to and everything. And it can be easy to not look forward at points when really it would be helpful if you did, especially when you're relocating with companies that will need to find you future positions. And so often it's very much forgotten about, last minute, all the stats, 50% of people who repatriate, I think in the first 2 years move on, around that figure from their organisation, and that's because they often don't find the appropriate next roles at home that kind of utilise that international experience. And I think it can be very easy to think, well, it's up to the company to solve this for me. But I think there are lots of ways that we can influence it as an employee. And then I'm also thinking about the partner, going back home or onto the next country, thinking about what they want to do with that experience and that time, and being a bit more proactive about it, and thinking ahead of time, so that they can then maximise the experience and get what they want from the experience. And on our podcasts, we've talked to quite a few people who've done amazing things with their international experience and as partners. And what comes through from them is this kind of taking time to take a step back and think about what they want to create, and not defining it fully, because you never know what your experience is going to bring. So you do have to have an open mind in terms of being open to different opportunities. But the very fact that you kind of have some idea and you're out there looking within this kind of these parameters, perhaps, it is helpful. And so just being a bit more future thinking forward to thinking about the future, and being more proactive about your planning process, I suppose. And when I say planning, I don't mean planning 1 month to the next, but just having an opinion and a view about what you want this experience to create for you longer term.
Having like a 5-year plan. I think it's always that's good advice for anyone. Abroad, internationally mobile, highly mobile, whatever, I think it's important to think about, okay, what do we each want to get out of our careers? What do we want to get out of our family? Like, is family time more important than career acceleration? Because, is this going to require more hours at work, or are we going to do a trade-off and have, less family time for a higher career and then take a break? Kind of having that game with your partner is really important, no matter where you are. And it's, I have Swedish friends, they're both in academia. And so academia is one of those where sometimes you have to be more mobile to get new positions. And you're kind of going from, grant proposal to grant proposal and hopping around. And the male partner said, okay, the last 2 moves have been for my career. And so the next 2 moves are going to be for her career. So then we're going to decide what's best for her next. So it's kind of great. They were taking time and saying, now that our kids are going to be a little bit older, then we can focus on her career, and then we can kind of switch. So and that's really important, actually. If you've got to, and then that's one of the big issues for a lot of organizations now, with the dual career couples who want to both continue with their careers, and in reality, can you ever keep 2 careers going simultaneously in the same way? Probably not. But how can you make it work? And one of the ways of making it work is to focus on one and then focus on another. But also think about, if you're the one that's career is taking a bit of a back step, how, as I said earlier, how do you keep that current, and how do you keep the focus on that for the future? Because it can, the one thing I've learned, as I've just had my 50th birthday, is, time passes so quickly, and I'm suddenly sitting here and, oh God, I'm 50. How did that happen? And I wish I could look back and say I did everything consciously and I was very clear, but I wasn't. And I think had I been, I perhaps would be in a slightly different place to where I am now. Would that be good? Would that be bad? Who knows? But I just kind of, if I was advising anybody, it would be to say, just make sure you're making conscious decisions and know why you're making. What criteria are you making those decisions on? And make sure that you're both understanding why you've made those choices, so that if you need to come back, I can give examples of where we've moved, and then in those first few months when you're home, we've looked back and thought, well, was this the right choice, or we made the biggest bad decision ever? But because we made a conscious decision and we've kind of written down why we've done it, we'll look back and we'll say, oh, no, remember, we've made it for these reasons, and these reasons are still valid now. So let's just focus on that and keep going. The outcome of the decisions you can't control, but as long as you're consistently making decisions with sort of the same goal in mind of, whatever it is, then hopefully you'll keep wandering down the path and get to the destination at the end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Louise, for...
You're welcome. Lovely to join you. I like this whole blob idea. A blob.
That's fun.
Blab.
Yeah, it's a fun way to connect with people around the world.
And so easy to do.
Yeah. All right, well, this will be posted on the Knocked Up Abroad website. And thank you, Sunday, for joining us and for liking.
Yes, Sunday there. Hi, Sunday.
And thanks. And everyone, thrivingabroad.com is on in the chat, so people can access your website and sign up for your newsletter and do all that other fun stuff.
Brilliant. Lovely. Well, thanks very much. Okay. Thank you.